Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Today is Monday, March the 4th, 2019. It's 9 o'clock. We're in the Government Service Building in our Commission chambers. And I would ask if Commissioner Sullivan, if you would lead us in the Pledge to the Flag.
Dan. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I think I said good evening. I meant good morning. Apologize about that.
Dark.
As we always do, please, I would ask if you would please take a moment and join us in a moment of silence so we can think about and remember the great men and women of our emergency services, fire rescue services, sheriff's department that serve us here in Flagler County, keep us safe and protected, and of course all the men and women that serve us in the United States military here and abroad. So please join us. Okay, thank you. We're going to entertain some additions, deletions, and modifications to the agenda. And this is a little bit of a, for those of you that come to attend a lot of our meetings, we're going to change procedures a little bit here insofar as in the past, sometimes we would have added agenda items that maybe came in late after it was published, which is our prerogative to do. But what we're going to do now is we're going to actually vote to change the agenda so we can add and delete things that we need to do and have a record of that. So, commissioners, any items that need to be added, deleted, or modified on the agenda that we need to talk about?
Mr. Chairman, I just have one minor change. Under general business, I would just reverse the order. I would recommend that we reverse the order of 8A and 8B. I'd like to do 8B first, which is kind of a big deal, which is our new software system. Get that out of the way, and then do 8A, which is a combination of items on our loan. So I would just do 8B before we do 8A.
You want to make a motion to that effect?
I'll make
please?
a motion to that effect.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to change the agenda order and reverse items 8A and 8B. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That motion carries 4-0.
Mr. Chairman, question.
Yes, sir.
Do we need to physically add these three items to the agenda, or?
Yeah, I was going to do that next.
Okay. All right.
Yes, sir. Well, in fact, if you'd like to do that, Commissioner, that'd be great.
Yes, sir. I move that we add item 8A, which is now item 8B, and consent item 7J.
And then I think there were some attachments to item 8A, too,
Right.
that we received. So,
And then also, it's not listed with a number, but the consideration of the interlocal agreement between Halifax and the Board of County Commissioners, Halifax Hospital and the Board of County Commissioners. I would request those three things be added to the agenda.
okay. Mr. Hadid, because we're kind of, this is my first time doing this, can we do them all together like that, or do we need to do them?
If there's no objection from the commissioners, that would be a compound motion. The commissioner could say, look, I'd like them separated out, but if nobody says that, you can proceed with a compound motion.
Okay, so do we have a second on Commissioner Hansen's motion?
Second.
All right, so the motion is to add proposed general business item regarding an interlocal agreement between Halifax Medical Center and Flagler County. Consent agenda item 7J. Reverse the order of items 8A and 8B, and then I think there's an attachment to 8A. So if that's the motion, we have a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Opposed, 0. Okay, that motion carries. All right, so that completes our additions, deletions, and modifications to the agenda. I have some announcements that I'll read, and bear with me. We got a few of them. Also, just announce up front that Commissioner Mullins is excused. He's excused for today. Okay, so item number one. Let's see. Okay. Flagler County Board of County Commission meetings are broadcast via YouTube. Unfortunately, due to the nature of the live streaming process, there may be unavoidable delays. When the meeting has concluded, it is typically posted within 24 hours. It can be viewed again in its entirety. Flagler County would like to make sure you receive important messages in a significant emergency or disaster. And to receive these messages, please sign up for the Alert Flagler notification system. Additionally, if you or a family member has special needs that may impact the ability to evacuate or seek shelter in a disaster, we'd ask you to please sign up for our special needs registry. And to do that, you can, and to sign up for Alert Flagler, you can do that through our website, which is flaglercounty.org/emergency, or you can call administrative offices at 313-4200. Registration is still open for the spring 2019 Flagler County Citizens Academy. Attendees will participate in 10 weekly sessions from 9 a.m. to noon, and that starts March the 20th and runs through May the 22nd. And interested citizens should contact Rose Kiernan at 386-313-4026. Rose's email address is rkiernan@flaglercounty.org. That's RKEIRNAN@flaglercounty.org. We're still soliciting registered voters residing in Flagler County for various boards and councils, and some of those positions by law must be filled by persons currently representing certain occupations or residing in a specific area of the county. And these positions will stay open until filled. And we have one member that's needed for the Affordable Housing Advisory Council that represents labor or the home building industry. We have a member needed for the Airport Advisory Board, and you should be obviously interested in aviation. We have 3 openings on the Contractor Review Board, one for a plumbing contractor, one for a roofing contractor, and one for an engineer or architect contractor. There's also one member needed for the Economic Opportunity Advisory Council, and that represents the manufacturing industry. We have an opening for the Land Acquisition Committee, which is one citizen at large. We need one citizen at large for the Library Board of Trustees, and we need 2 members for the Tourist Development Council, one member that's involved in the tourist industry only, and one that represents owners or operators that are subject to the tourist development tax. All positions, as I said, will be open until filled, and you can contact us at our website, flaglercounty.org, and it's under Advisory Board vacancies, or you can also contact Ms. Christy Mayer at 313-4094. And just an announcement, our upcoming commission meetings and workshops, special meetings. Right now, the only thing we have scheduled is for Monday, March the 18th. That's our next regularly scheduled Board of County Commissioners meeting, which is 5 o'clock here in these chambers. Okay, so that concludes our announcements, and we're going to move into item 4 on the agenda, which is recognitions, proclamations, and presentations. And we have a proclamation on Children's Week, which runs from March the 24th through the 30th. And I see we have some fine folks that are dear to my heart from the Early Learning Coalition, Miss Allison Miller and Miss DJ LeBeau. And Commissioner Hanson, if you wouldn't mind reading the proclamation, appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A proclamation of the Flagler County Board of County Commissioners.
Yep.
You bring them up?
Yeah, they're coming up.
I'll start over. A proclamation of the Flagler County Board of County Commissioners proclaiming the week of March 24th through the 30th, 2019 as Parents and Children's Week in Flagler County. Whereas the 24th Annual Children's Week celebrating parents and children will take place in Tallahassee from March 24th through March 30th, 2019, bringing thousands of parents, children, professionals, policymakers, community leaders, and concerned citizens together to share valuable knowledge and information about children's issues across the state and in our capital city. And whereas the purpose of Children's Week is to create a shared vision of the state of Florida's commitment to its children and families and to engage a long-term process to develop and implement strategies for moving the shared vision forward. And whereas originally established as Children's Day in 1988, the 2002 Florida legislature renamed this official statewide Florida holiday as Parents and Children's Day to more fully reflect and support of the most important institution in Florida, the family. And whereas Children's Week has teamed up with more than 100 leading statewide business and nonprofit organizations and hundreds of local organizations to expand the network of community involvement and education on a wide array of children and family issues at the local level. And whereas hundreds of local municipalities have officially proclaimed Children's Day and hosted hundreds of public events and activities for parents and children in their community. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Flagler County Board of County Commissioners that they hereby proclaim the week of March 24th through the 30th, 2019 as Parents and Children's Week, and encourages everyone to participate in the various events and activities in Flagler County. Adopted this 4th day of March, 2019, attested by Tom Bexley, Clerk of the Circuit Court and Comptroller, and signed by the Chairman of the Flagler County Board of County Commissioners, Donald T. O'Brien.
All right. Well, thank you, Commissioner. Ladies, welcome. Want to say a few words?
We would love to.
Thanks.
So first of all, I'm DJ Lebo, and this is Allison Miller, and we want to thank you, first of all, for supporting children. The funds that you give us help fund over almost 300 children right here in Volusia, or in Flagler County. We serve about 700 school readiness children and about 350 voluntary pre-kindergarten children. So we're very excited that you continue to support us. Are the hands still out there? Mm-hmm. So that you see the hands when you walk in, if you noticed them, those are hands that are produced by some of your child care providers here in town and your public school system. We'll take those up to Tallahassee in the end of March, and they will fill the whole rotunda. So all around the state, we'll bring them up. And the idea of it is to remind legislators and those of you that are elected officials that when you make decisions, every one of those affects a child. And so we like to make sure that you can just remember that. We're extremely thankful to have Donald as a member of our board. He's extremely supportive, very knowledgeable, and always is helpful to everything that we do. We have a small little token of appreciation. These were actually created by your VPK kids in one of the elementary schools. So again, we'd just like to thank you and continue to support us. We look forward to that.
Okay, well, thank you, ladies. We sure appreciate it. Would you mind a quick photo too? Maybe you want to come on up here if you wouldn't mind. So, would you rather stay there, DJ, and you guys can just stand up front here, but just probably be easier. So, thanks.
Righty, is everybody ready? I'm gonna take a couple. Keep smiling, keep those eyes open. Should be good. Thank you. All right.
Just want to entertain a motion for the proclamation.
Move to approve the Children's Week, right?
Second.
Proclamation.
Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, that motion carries. Okay, next up on the agenda, we don't have any presentations, so next up on the agenda is our community outreach time. And this is a 30-minute time period which has been allocated for public comment on any consent agenda item or topic not on the agenda. Each speaker will be allowed up to 3 minutes to address the commission, and speakers should approach the podium, identify themselves, and direct commitments to the chair. Now, I would ask the indulgence of our audience here today, and anyone that wants to speak, you'll get your chance. I've talked with our fellow commissioners here, and by consensus, I'm going to ask them if we could give a little extra time to one of the future problem-solving groups that are here in the audience this morning and want to talk to the commission about their project. And we didn't have them on the agenda, but we're going to give them a few extra minutes, and I hope everybody is okay with that. It's pretty hard to say no to children, so I think hopefully you guys can understand that. So with that, I'll open public comment and would ask that group if you guys want to come forward here. Commissioners, I apologize. Is that okay that we do that?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Jerry Berry. I am a teacher at Bunnell Elementary School, and I'm the coach for our Bunnell Elementary School Community Problem Solvers. And we have a presentation for you all today, and I will let them introduce themselves and talk with you all. Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm Ryan Gilveri, and hello. We are SOS Saving Our Skin, a 6th grade community problem solvers group. We are implementing a community project to place sunscreen dispensers at Flagler County parks and beaches. Skin cancer is the most diagnosed cancer in the U.S., but it is also the most preventable, and 90% of it is caused by overexposure to the sun.
Hello, my name is Darian Rushnick. Think of how many people make an unplanned stop at the park or the beach and don't have sunscreen. Do you know how many people in this room have ever made an unplanned stop at the park or the beach? Of those who have, how many of you forgot to bring the sunscreen with you? Raise your hands if you have.
My name is Aaliyah Acevedo. Based on our answers alone and our polling, both children and adults in Flagler County are in the elements without protection. Providing dispensers in easily accessible locations will provide citizens access to sunscreen that could reduce the risk of overexposure, reducing their risk of getting skin cancer.
My name is Ella Bredstrup. We are partnering with SunStation USA to install sunscreen dispensers into Flagler County parks and beaches. They committed to providing us with 10 sunscreen dispensers, a cost of $750. Each bag of sunscreen costs $50 and holds up to 2,000 applications of 30 SPF rated sunscreen. Each sunscreen dispenser can be placed near entrances of parks and pier and highly populated areas of the county.
Hi, I'm Dear Jones. We propose that the city of Palm Coast or Flagler Beach pay for the cost of the sunscreen in order to be part of the solution to protect their citizens and tourists. In fact, tourism may rise if they like this additional courtesy to their beachgoers or park attendees. As part of this, the Parks and Rec Department would add this to their inspection checklists for each location and refill them as needed. We can also ask for corporate sponsorships to pay for the sunscreen. Our group, SOS, will obtain the sponsorships for the initial purchase of sunscreen, as we understand that you were just going in the budget season for next year, and this is not part of your approved funding.
I'm Austin Ziegler, and our goal is to have at a minimum 2 sunscreen dispensers installed by March 10th, one to be installed at Wadsworth Park and Flagler County Pier. It'll be just in time for spring break.
It will.
In closing, we ask that each of you take a sun safety pledge, pledging that you will reapply every hour when you are at the beach or swimming. So everybody raise your right hand, please. Okay, and then repeat after me. I pledge that I will reapply sunscreen every 2 hours when outside, but not swimming or at the beach.
Reapply sunscreen every 2 hours while at the beach and active outside.
I will not use tanning beds.
I will not use tanning beds.
And I will persuade others to wear sunscreen on a regular basis.
Regular basis.
Thank you for your time and consideration of our proposal to help prevent skin cancer for those citizens that choose to enjoy the natural beauty in our community.
So I think as follow-up, your ask for us is to support the location of the dispensers at some of our county parks, correct? Okay, and there's a monetary ask too, correct? Oh, did I hear right? It was about $750?
We're supplying 10 sunscreen dispensers with the 10 bags of the sunscreen.
your organization is.
Yes.
You just want permission or help in installing them somewhere at our parks.
And then assessing future use.
Okay. Okay. Sounds like we probably need a little bit more discussion on that. I would, Commissioners, I'm more than happy to meet with the group.
I noticed that one of the City of Flagler Beach Commissioners is here. If we're going to put it on the pier, we probably ought to.
Well, yeah,
Okay from him.
yeah. I mean, that's where we need some coordination, and we'll be glad to help do that. Put a tight time frame on that, March the 10th. But again, I would volunteer, Commissioners, to meet with the group here in the next few days and see if we can't put you in touch with our parks people and maybe the other municipality like Flagler Beach, because we can't make decisions for them, but we could put everybody in touch with that, and I think we could probably help you. And I'm sure I would be willing, and I'm sure some other folks would be willing to support to get some private contributions to try to support. We can help with that. So.
And in addition, we ask that a proclamation be made to make the month of May Skin Cancer Awareness Month.
Okay, so administration's listening to that, and I think that they can work on that for you. And we'll be in touch about that. Okay. And Miss Galvari has my email address. She knows how to find me, so we'll be glad to support you. So, Commissioner,
I just wish I had heard this 30 years ago, and I wouldn't have this 3-inch ugly scar on my forehead.
All right. Well, thank you all for coming. Congratulations, great work, and we'll be in touch. Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for your time. Can we get a picture for a moment?
I'm sorry. Picture.
They would like to get a photo with us. Maybe if you all want to stand up front here, we'll do that.
That's part of your
I put it on every morning.
Hey, hold on, guys.
Hold it.
Thank you.
I never take one, I always take a couple. Oops. Ready? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. We appreciate your time.
Okay, we'll continue with community outreach, and we'll make sure that we comply and keep it at. We'll keep the 30 minutes, so that didn't take away from the 30 minutes. Make sure we're okay with that. So, please, anyone that wants to speak, please approach the podium, identify yourself, and let's go.
Rick Belliamer, Flagler Beach. I went to Wickline Park this weekend, and they had a football tournament there for 2 days, Saturday and Sunday. First of all, I was just amazed in the condition of those fields. The groundskeeper that you guys have hired to take care of those grounds is incredible. Last time I remember being there, it was mostly sand, but now it's all very tightly knit Bermuda grass. And even though they had rain on Saturday night, the fields held up very well. There's no weeds, no insects. It's just great fields over there. And we have some great parks in Flagler County and good people taking care of them. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. Morning, sir.
Good morning. I'm Mike Cochiolo from Palm Coast.
Yes, sir.
First, I drove up A1A yesterday. I want to commend the board for any assistance you gave to the Flagler Beach, because that construction is finally going to preserve not only the A1A but the beach, and that's a great thing. So whatever you did to help that along, we thank you. I'm not at Flagler Beach, but I still love the beach. So that you still have two issues that you've got to deal with. One is Bing's Landing, and the other one is the sheriff's building. I know that. So just to just keep pushing forward. But what I want to talk about was today was homeless. We proclaimed Children's Week this month. There are probably 200 or more homeless children living out there on the streets, in the woods. We know of the issue on the Flagler County owned land next to the library. There's more than that around Flagler County. I'm going to urge this commission to work closely with the communities within Flagler County to deal with the issue of homeless in a way that helps the homeless and protects their rights, but also recognizes what the community can do for this issue. We have to balance all that. It's going to be tough, but it has to be done. You can't just enact, for example, any kind of rules that would just push the homeless around from place to place. That won't work. Stepping on a balloon doesn't work. These are citizens, they have rights, and they have needs. We've got to deal with that. So I'm urging the commission right now to work with, I know Palm Coast hopefully is going to take that on pretty soon, and I'm hoping that the commission will take that issue on. It's that important to this community. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, sir. Next speaker. Good morning.
Morning. Joan Affatato from Plantation Bay. I have a question. I'm just curious if the commissioners and our county administrator, Mr. Conrad, has signed the 97 permits allowing Mari Husseini to continue with our wastewater system, for the homes to be allowed to use our wastewater system. I don't know if you can answer my question right now, but I have another question. Has a workshop been planned for our wastewater? Are you able to answer that for me, or should I wait until the next time that I can get up and speak?
No, we answer everything at the end of community outreach, so we'll do it all at once.
Okay, that will be at the end.
No, just right at the end of this 30-minute segment here.
Okay, I would like an answer to that. Thank you.
Yes.
Morning, Jane Gentile, Plantation Bay, and I'll donate a few dollars to those kids. I wish I knew about sunscreen too, but I cover my face. I have the same questions as Joan Affatato and even more. I wasn't going to speak today out of deference to my own commissioner, who is not here, but a workshop was recommended by Faith Al-Khatib, our engineer, and Heidi Petito on February 4th and again on the 18th. In all the years I've been coming to county commission meetings, the workshops have usually been scheduled right there at that very time. It didn't happen on the 4th. The next commission meeting, I spoke out of turn. I didn't say Robert's Rules of Order, point of order, which I would have been allowed to continue, but I didn't say that. I think it's disgraceful we don't have a workshop. I am requesting that the 97 pending final approval, DEP, FDEP, Florida Department of Environmental Protection, they have to sign off because they are the issuers of wastewater permits. I sent you all something yesterday. I've spoken with everyone I can, including Russell Simpson from FDEP. They will not issue final permits until the county signs off. You've seen photographs of the very precarious situation of the wastewater tank. My commissioner actually climbed up there, and I know Mr. Sullivan, you did too, and I don't know how you did it, I wouldn't do it, and have pictures. And I spoke to Mr. Russell Simpson of FDEP, and our new administrator is really overloaded between our water, Bing's Landing, the sheriff's. If the county signs off on the 97 pending permits for wastewater to add to the overbuilding in Plantation Bay to begin with, The county needs to know that if anything should happen, that the county will be held liable. And I don't care what your attorney says to you. Everybody knows that this is a deplorable condition, and I will speak to you again at the end of the meeting. I believe it is imperative that you authorize a moratorium on any new development in the entire system, not just Plantation Bay, Plantation Reserve, Dixie Commons, and negotiating with the hotel, the abandoned hotel across the street. You gentlemen need a moratorium for at least 3 months minimum till these issues get resolved and to save the county at large from liability. The county is in debt the way it is. It's disgraceful. And to think about adding $6 million for a reverse osmosis when we have 2 busted wells is beyond comprehension. Thank you. I'll speak to you again at the end of the meeting, and I want the same answers that Joan Affatato asked, the 97 permits and the workshop.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good morning, George Mayo, Palm Coast. I want to welcome our new county administrator for his first official meeting, I guess you could say. A couple of things I have today is up before the legislature right now is a primary texting and driving bill. Seeing how it is, every committee is trying to add a little, take away a little, and there's fear that it might not get passed. Florida is one of 3 states that does not have a primary offense for texting and driving or distracted driving. I'm hoping that our commission as a representative could contact our representatives while they're there and ask them to please try and push with their efforts to push the primary offense texting, driving, distracted a bill going through. Concerning the Flagler Sheriff's Office, just my personal opinion, I know it's not an easy, quick, or not costly solution. I think trying to remediate that building almost as well as similar situation as Captain's up in Bing's Landing. Trying to remediate it and just fix it and go back in there, I think is throwing good money after bad. I know it's going to cost us money, but I just don't think trying to fix it, patch it up is not the right solution. Also, I find kind of ironic, we're talking, of course, I'm not a member, I don't live in Plantation Bay, but I've spoke about it before. On February 13th, the Daytona Beach News Journal has an article by Sean Ryan of water woes at Plantation Bay and their problems there. I know this is of urgency to you, this is ongoing right now, and yet on the 23rd, just 10 days later, in the real estate section of Daytona Beach News Journal, Plantation Bay, a hidden jewel. It's thriving and vibrant, and they just completed their 2,000th home, and they're planning another 3,000 homes. Says nothing, of course, all the amenities, beautiful houses, et cetera, and I don't deny that they're probably beautiful houses. Has nothing in here about possible water problems and going forward. So kind of ironic, but I just hope that can be. I've spoken about a moratorium, and if this just keeps compounding, getting worse before you fix the situation, I just think it's a bad situation. Okay, thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Any other speakers for this morning? Morning, sir.
Hello, how you doing? Good morning. My name is Randy J., Flagler Beach. I wrote a book a year ago called Flagler County, Florida, A Centennial History, and done a lot of research on Flagler County history. And I understand that this board wants to tear down the WPA-built Flagler County Jail right across the street here. And I sent you a research paper I did a couple weeks ago. I've never received anything back, so I'm assuming you read that. And I'm hoping you understand the historical significance of that building. That building is only one of 3 buildings that was built by FDR's New Deal program here in Flagler County. The other 2 buildings are already on the National Register of Historic Places. So I'm wondering if we could, I have one question. Have we ever gotten together with some type of a workshop to understand the significance of that building and possibly saving it for future generations and current generations? It is a time capsule to our past, and I hope you realize how important that is. If you don't, I can give you some additional information. I know, Sullivan, you and I talked about this a little bit before. I know kind of where you're standing, but I don't think there's been any feasibility study done on how important that building is and why it should stand. So I'd like to get some communication, some information back from you to find out if we can save that building. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jay. Anyone else wish to address the commission this morning? Oh, okay, seeing none. No one else approach the podium. I'll close our community outreach portion. A couple things, I guess. With respect to the signed permits for Plantation Bay, either you gentlemen want to comment on that?
Mr. Chairman, I have not signed any permits.
Okay. Any comments from any of the commissioners regarding?
Just the next question.
Yeah, as far as a workshop goes?
I did have a comment on that.
Okay, please.
I'll go to anybody else want? I do want to say something on that.
Go ahead.
Okay, my feeling on the workshop for Plantation Bay is as follows. I don't think there's any doubt among any of the commissioners, I'm speaking for myself now, but I don't think there's any doubt that we have a serious problem there and it needs to be addressed. I don't need a workshop to tell me about the details of what's going on. I've been down there. I've been down there in 2016. I did a detailed look. I did a detailed look in the last couple of weeks. There's no doubt we need to do something about that. But having a workshop just to go over those points, to me, with the other commissioners, doesn't make a lot of sense right now. What I'd like to see is to give our staff the urgency of the situation, let them come up with some options about what we think we can do. We're tight on money in the county and so on and so forth. So at this point, a workshop may well be needed, but I would like to be addressed by our staff that when they're ready to do a workshop, by looking into this, make sure we've looked into it and have some new information to provide. So I would not just have a workshop to have the workshop about what I already know about. I'd rather have a workshop with some idea of where we are and what we can do.
Commissioners, you care to comment?
No, I agree with Commissioner Sullivan. It's just to have a workshop is fruitless. So.
I agree. I think we just need to get it in writing and get it started ASAP.
I pretty much concur with your comments, Commissioner Sullivan. I know that we do have a plan, and of course, having a change in administration, I'm always open to and actually need to have the opinion and feedback of our new administrator as to where we stand on things. But I can completely concur with your your position as far as the workshop goes. So,
Mr. Chairman,
yeah.
I too believe that you ought to have the information in front of you necessary to have a productive conversation. We are in the process of assembling that information now. I anticipate getting that done in the very near future, and you would be notified as the chair that the issue would be ripe for a workshop.
Okay, thank you. With respect to a couple of the comments, on the texting and distracted driving legislation, Mr. Mayor, I know that's not an official position that we've taken as far as our legislative agenda goes, so I would, probably defer to the individual commissioners to contact our legislators. I can tell you I'm with you on that one. Personally, that's something that's a big issue for me, and I tell you, it's kind of scary. I heard the other day that a bike week is coinciding with spring break this year in our county, which is just wonderful, having a bunch of distracted, possible teenage drivers on the road with bikers at the same time. That's not probably a very healthy mix, but anyway, that's my 2 cents on that. And then, I think in terms of that, the WPA building, again, I don't know that it's already in the works in terms of what we're supposed to do with that building, and I wouldn't be in favor of deviating from staff's plan to demolish the building as it stands. So I don't know if you care to comment.
Well, we discussed it at the strategic planning workshop, and we agreed then that we would do away with that building. So.
Mr. Chairman, I've looked at it carefully. I've read Mr. Jay's comments on it, and I understand. I went over there again this weekend, taking a look at that property, and there is some property there that can be used to help us, so we don't have to keep buying land that we don't need. And I think the plan right now, maybe our staff can talk to it, is that we need that location to support our Public Works Department. And as the building as it stands now, I've looked at it. I understand the point, but I just don't see maintaining that building where it is right now and not take advantage of the land we have over there for future requirements.
Okay, I'm going to move us on to the consent agenda. We'll go from left to right there, Mr. Erickson. Mr. Erickson, any items to remove from the consent agenda?
Just one small question on 7D.
So you'd like to pull 7D?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mr. Hanson?
I have none.
None.
None and none for the chair. I'm sorry.
Excuse me. We did add some information to 7J. That was the amendment, the first part of the amendments, the three amendments we agreed to.
No, 7J is the...
That's the ship. That's the ship issue.
Oh, I apologize. Yes, sir, you are correct. So 7J would...
And see, it says 7J on the amendment, and I would just I would pull it just to get a little fuller explanation of that issue, since we've got this additional information concerning it. Okay?
Okay, so...
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the consent agenda with the exception of items 7D and 7J.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That motion carries 4-0. Okay. So first item, Commissioner Erickson, 7D.
Morning.
Good morning. Matt Dunn, Tourist Development.
Just a little more information on the first item there, the One Love Tennis, and also does it tie in with Family Life Center? Did I read that?
Yes, sir. A charitable contribution will be made to the Family Life Center with the proceeds from the tournament.
Okay.
Correct.
That's all I had on.
Okay. All right.
Any other questions? Okay, so entertain a motion on it.
Recommend approval.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second on item 7D, which is consideration of Tourist Development Council Fund 110 discretionary event funding. Open that up to public comment on that item, 7D. Seeing no one approach the podium, I'll close public comment on that item, bring it back to the commission for a vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None, so that motion carries 4-0. Second item is pulled is item 7J.
Right. And we have our ship person.
Okay. Morning, Ralston.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Ralston Ryudika, the ship administrator. And so Exhibit H was added by Mr. Hadid to add clarification and kind of more oversight on making sure that our ship recipients are complying with the terms of the mortgage and the note, because we do get a handful of foreclosure notices in a given year, and so this is just going to provide more monitoring and kind of reviewing of our lien documents to ensure that our recipients are in compliance.
I did get a couple of questions from our citizens about aspects of the program. Just for my benefit, what would be like the lowest number you'd be helping somebody with on their home versus a more fuller support of their mortgage, that kind of thing? So are there small projects that you're willing to do on this, that kind of thing?
For what type of assistance, like down payment?
For people need assistance on their home to correct deficiencies caused by their lack of funds to fix it, or say storm damage, that kind of thing. Does that still go on?
Yes, sir. We do have a wait list that we're trying to get through. It's been difficult because the state has cut our funding the past 2 years, but we do typically have an initial assessment done by a home inspector to see what systems need to be addressed. And so it could be replacing a HVAC unit or a roof. It could be more comprehensive. So it just depends on each case by case and then the funding that's available.
And in other words, okay, is it better to do a lot of small things, in your view, or is it better to take on the bigger issues?
Well, the state recommends that we address as many of the critical items in a home. But again, it's difficult when the legislature keeps cutting our funding. So it's really case by case, year by year. But we try to address the most urgent needs.
A lot of that's been storm damage, though, as you mentioned.
Yes, sir. In recent years, because of Hurricanes Matthew and Irma.
I want to support you on this the way this Exhibit H is worded, because I think it's one of the key tenets or one of the key things we do to prevent homeless in our county. And this is a key program to do that, so people don't lose their homes. And I commend you for that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you to Mr. Hadid also for.
There's also a lot of handicap revisions to the home, et cetera. Also, am I correct on that?
That's part of it, yes, sir. There's accessibility modifications if one needs it.
And I just say monitoring is really important, that we don't end up having people take advantage of the situation either.
Yes, sir.
Make a motion that we approve item 7.
Mike there, sir.
Make a motion that we approve item 7J, including the additional information we received this morning.
A second.
We have a motion and a second on item 7J. Anyone from the public wish to comment on item 7J? All right, seeing no one approach the podium, I'll close public comment on item 7J. Bring it back for a vote. All those in favor of the motion to approve it, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, none. That motion carries. Okay. So that closes out our consent agenda items. We're going to move to general business, and again, just a reminder to make sure it's clear for everyone, we're reversing the order, and 8B will now be considered first as item 8A, and then 8A will now be considered as 8B, and we've added a third item, 8C, which is an interlocal agreement between Flagler County and Halifax Hospital Medical Center. So we'll first go with what was 8B, it's now 8A, and that is, I'll read it. It's a consideration of 2 amendments to licenses and services agreement with Tyler Technologies for ERP financial solutions not to exceed $2,145,010 for the Board of County Commissioners, plus the clerk of the court and the controller, the sheriff's office, and the supervisor of elections. So I guess we have some staff presentation here.
Not really much, other than here to ask some questions if you have them, or answer
Identify
questions.
yourself, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry. Jared Shoup, Innovation Technology Director, Flagler County. My apologies.
Okay.
We are here with, there is a group here, I believe there's a coalition here from the Sheriff's Office as well as the Clerk's Office to stand with us to say that we are ready to move forward with the project. With this being said, the documents you do have are draft documents. We're in the process still of negotiating some of the financial timelines that are on there. And then just making sure that the documents themselves have all the needed entities or items, modules for all the entities as well. So there's a little bit of tweaking with this, but the money that we're asking for will cover the initial plan. We do not expect to have to come back for a second ask. So we made sure that there's a small portion of contingency in there if we should need so for additional training or travel expenses.
Okay. Did you wish to comment on this, Ms. Laurie?
Lori Bailey Brown, Financial Services Director. I'm just here in support of the amendment, as well as I know the clerk's office is here representing support, the sheriff's office, and Katie Lenhart is also looking forward, Supervisor of Elections, of coming on board with the software. Just here for support and to answer any questions.
Go that way first. Commissioner Sullivan?
Right. Thank you. I really feel good about this because it was just not even a week ago we had a meeting where there was some disagreement. So I see our clerk is back there. So you and the sheriff and Katie have kind of come to the point where we're ready to go forward with this program. And I would like to point out, and the reason I'm doing this now is because it does run into the other item that we'll address next, and that is that the $2,145,010 was voted on by the entire board to cover a period of 2 years, this fiscal year and next fiscal year. So we're not borrowing this money like on a long-term basis, but this money is in the budget to be for this program, and what we have to do, it's easier to explain what we're going to talk about next in that light, and that's why I put this in first. But this isn't something we've just come up with. It's been working for a number of years. It's funded. We did move some of the funding last year. Actually, our chairman we did that, which saved a little money in this year for the budget, but it is funded in those 2 years, and we're going to go forward with it, which I think is a good thing that we're finally getting around to doing that.
Commissioner Erickson? Excuse me. I'm sorry, Commissioner Hanson. I apologize.
Jared, in 3 places in that agreement, they use the phrase escalation. And I know what that means, but I couldn't figure out what it meant in your document.
I'll have to review that. Give me 1 moment, and I'll do some reference. Hold on.
Look in the executive summary, paragraph 2J, I think. But
project guidance?
Yes, project guidance. That was the first time it's used.
Yeah, the project guidance is discussing the governance structure issue escalation. It's basically building for our team, and a little bit of what that explains is our different project managers that we're going to be able to have, as well as project managers through Tyler, and being able to raise that. One of the things is we did bring escalate, more or less, the issue originally to y'all as to the agreement between all of us. It would be the same course of action. If our team is unable to do it, we escalate it to our elected officials, county administration, and ultimately to the team that's ultimately steering this, the steering committee or yourselves. So we're going to be using an escalation process through this if should need fit, if for some reason we don't agree as an entity. But we have already all taken the initial course of action of sitting down and saying, this is a living room table. We're going to try and work this out without having to come to the elected officials, in the public, to discuss any type of issues we have. So our escalation is more or less to the team, the steering committee, the group that we're going to put together, the sheriffs, supervisor elections, clerks, county IT, that'll meet. And if we can't agree, we'll of course bring that to Mr. Bexley, Sheriff Staley, Ms. Lenhart, and or our county administrator before we bring it any further. So there will be some escalation paths that we should need to do in case we do have an issue.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Anything, Commissioner Erickson?
No, sir.
So I'm assuming we're still at a work in progress in terms of the discussions regarding housing of the software and permissions and rights and all of the security side of it, which is, and if the clerk, if you'd like to chime in, please do so. No? Okay.
We've come to an agreement that this process is going to be ever living. As we start the process of putting the software in, that the reason why you don't see an MOU in front of you is because we're not ready to write an MOU. An MOU may need to be struck when we get closer to the full-on go-live date through this process, but there are so many workflows and evaluations that need to be done through the process that we really don't know 100% of all of the tasks that are going to happen. And we have that as part of this plan, is to have the vendor work through those best practices with us. As for security, like anything else, the clerk and ourselves and the constitutional entities that are all involved, the sheriff's office, supervisor election, and the clerk, we're going to make sure that this is secure. Housing of the software, we're still working on that as well. You know, Ms. Lenhart did asked to possibly have hers separated out, and that's one of the things we're working with right now is
To keep it away from the Russians?
Correct.
Yes, okay.
Correct.
Making sure. Yeah.
We do have the Russian hacking room, so thank you.
Okay. All right. Any other questions from the commission? All right. If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve item, which was 8B.
Formerly known as 8B now.
Formerly known as 8B. Now known as 8A.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I'll open it up to any public comments or questions.
Morning again, George Mayo, Palm Coast. I know Jared just mentioned security, and I keep reading almost weekly how city governments, county governments are held up to ransomware. They're hacked. He mentioned security. I'd just like to know if we will have a dedicated person on staff to keep track of this and not just say we have a firewall and then all of a sudden find out it's been breached or whatever. So, thank you.
Okay. Any other comments from the public? All right, seeing no one approach the podium, I'll bring it back. Did you want to address the item of issue of security, Jared?
I could. I'll address it on our side, and then the clerk may want to step up and discuss it on their side because it is twofold. We do not have a dedicated security analyst on staff. It has been asked for in previous budget years, and we will be looking at that here in the future. We have actually had ransomware hit our infrastructures a few times here over the last number of years. We've been able to come back without any lost data. So we do have a very tight security analysis process and triggering and notification systems in place. We have robust backup and redundancy, as well as I believe the clerk's office does as well. And I'm not sure if the clerk would want to come up and speak, but I'm probably saying the same thing that they have in place as well. So, so there's where we're at with network security and server security and software as well.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion on the floor and a second. Call a question. All those in favor of the motion to approve this item, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. That motion carries unanimously. Okay, item item 8, formerly known as item 8A, which is now item 8B, which is, I'll read it, request the board approve the resolution authorizing a loan from the Florida Local Government Finance Commission in an aggregate principal amount of $2,116,000 for the purpose of financing certain property, software, and capital equipment. And Ms. Brown?
Good morning. Lori Bailey Brown, Financial Services Director. Included in the fiscal year 1920 budget is the purchase of the software, a portion of it funded through this commercial paper program in the budget, as well as some fire equipment, mechanized stretchers, where we were going after a grant, which is still in process, and we're borrowing the portion of grant match for that, for the purchase of that equipment, as well as the SCBA equipment, also fire safety equipment. Those were planned through the budget process. In November, on November 19th, the board approved the purchase of a property referred to as a Sears property. There's been discussions about it. And at that time, it was also included in the staff report that that's how that purchase would be funded. So it's included in this commercial paper borrowing as well. So commercial paper is kind of like a line of credit that the Flagler County has with the Florida Association of Counties. We can draw down at any time. It's fairly simple process for borrowing, fairly quick. It generally has a 5-year, or it does have a 5-year payback, as this does, and that's how we budgeted for the equipment. And we have a budget resolution attached here as well to appropriate the funding of the purchase of the property. The interest is relatively low on this commercial paper program. It's short term. If we can find a way to pay it off sooner, of course we would. And I'm here to answer any questions you have about this borrowing.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Right. I've become fairly upset about the way we've been handling finances for purchase of buildings and so on and so forth. Now, we've kludged together purchase of the Sears building for $1.3 million. In November, it made some sense to do that. It doesn't make any sense now. We have the sheriff's precinct office in Palm Coast in the old bank that's coming along. It's taking longer. It's costing more, so on. But the sheriff really asked us to do that. We have to get out of the other City Walk bad deal we have there. So it made sense to do that. It's taking longer and costing more than we thought it was going to do, which is, to me, another example of buying old buildings and not having them work out the way we thought they would. But the Sears building is a newer building. Our tax collector thought she needed more room, but right now that building is more than she wants. Since we already have purchased the sheriff's precinct building in Palm Coast, he's going to have to move in there. There's really no need for that building right now, no harsh need. And in the meantime, we've got the Plantation Bay problem. We've got the Sheriff's Operations Center problem. We have very little excess reserve money to be buying anything. As soon as I saw this issue, normally when this was presented in November, we were always told we'll get another shot at this before it's finalized. Well, that shot went by without us being aware that the loan is locked in. So as hard as I'm trying, apparently legally we have to buy this building. Now, this is on short-term money, and if you look at the short term, it's not cheap. This is going to cost the county, our budget, over 5 years, $423,000 each year, final payment in 2023, $424,000. So we're locking in those payments for the budget for the next 5 years. They're locked in now when we approve this. So I think it goes back to the overall problem of buying private property, taking it off the tax rolls, and then ending up having to spend more to fix it and make it available for use. We have a good example of Sheriff's Operations Center, the old hospital that we bought, this new sheriff's location in Palm Coast, which is turning out to be an additional cost. And now we're stuck with trying to buy this Sears building that we really don't need right now, given the other requirements we had. I would love to have some way of separating this money out. So we obviously want to do the software, which we've already approved, and the fire equipment. But apparently, as hard as I've tried, there apparently is no way to do that. But because of that, I just feel that when we buy private property, the only people that make out on that are the real estate agent that gets 6% up front. We lose the tax money for the duration of the job. For instance, the Sears building. Somebody's paying taxes on that right now. We're not going to get those taxes anymore. So the cost is a little bit higher than the $1.3 million looks, because we're going to lose the tax money for the next 5 years now on that, and the value of the building is fine. But I think it's time for us as a county to stop buying things that end up costing us more money than we thought. We have 17, 18 acres at the public library on Palm Coast that has plenty of room. We could have built a new sheriff's precinct office, and when our tax collector absolutely needs the room, we could do the same thing there. There'd be no tax loss to the taxpayers. We'd have a new building. We wouldn't worry about mold and everything else that goes on. So I'm just spouting off here, but I've been around now for a couple of years, and I just think that we're getting ourselves put in a situation which is really untenable. We're pulling business tax money out of the county, and we're adding debt. So that's my point. I realize that we probably can't do anything about this right now. I'd love to get confirmation of that from you and our lawyer, that there's no way we can get out of that buying that Sears building right now. And that's it. That's my question.
Commissioners?
I think he raises quite a few good points, almost to the point that we ought to take this back and take a look at it again. But we got to vote on it here today and give our new head man some opportunity to take a look at this and from his point of view. But
I agree with the question. Can we get out of that? Right. I don't know. Mr. Adid, can we get out of that purchase?
Based upon the information from Mr. Telfer, who administers this agreement, who structured it and implemented it with the seller, we are past the point at which we can cancel it unless we are not satisfied with the terms of financing.
Mr. Cameron, any care to comment? I understand you're stuck in the middle of things here, brand new. But if you're not ready yet, that's fine too. So,
I did come in on the tail end of this one, and I can only say that if we are locked in legally, that it would probably be unwise to incur the liabilities of backing out of the contract. If there is a contingency in the contract, then we do have some serious financial considerations moving forward. I've had an opportunity to look at our finances, and they require a much deeper dive, and I need to, during this budget process, make the commission fully aware of the financial position of the county, and therefore anything that we don't have to spend until we have a complete understanding of that, I would agree with.
you care to comment, Mr. Telfer?
Good morning. Tim Telfer, Public Lands and Natural Resources Manager for Flagler County. And my role in these projects is, in essence, a general shepherd of the project through the county's internal processes. Occasionally I'm brought in for the negotiations or contract drafting. In this circumstance, I was not brought in for the negotiations, but I did assist the county administrator in developing this contract. It was an option contract exercised by the board at the November 19th meeting. And if there are questions about this specific language, how it reads, this discussion about the terms, the unacceptability of terms of the financing, we're prepared to bring that up for the board's consideration also. But in essence, it's been characterized correctly. The board has to make a determination under the terms of that contract that the financing terms that are being presented are unacceptable.
Mr. Hadid? When I read
that is correct. Oh, you were starting to answer. I
Yeah.
thought you wanted me to comment on his statement.
Well, when I read the contract, it was almost like a standard real estate purchase sale contract, and it has out clauses in that if you can't get financing or if the financing is just not acceptable. But we have. I can't even imagine that we should walk away or regardless of the usage and the need and all of that. There's a legal issue here with respect to the county honoring its contracts, and something that we agreed to back in November, and it's way past the time to walk away from a real estate purchase and sale contract, unless
based on the information that Mr. Telfer gave me in greater detail about the course of the discussions, course of dealing. That's a phrase in commercial law. The owner is expecting us to close. The owner has already consented to an extension. The board did vote the option. When these items were bundled financially for the loan, so you have, and I don't know all the subjects that are embraced within this loan, but I know it's fire equipment, software, and this land purchase. So I want you to think about this in a hypothetical courtroom. If the financing terms were acceptable in order to acquire the fire equipment and the software and whatever else might be funded, but not acceptable for the purchase of the land, it would be a very difficult position to maintain legally. The words say that you find the terms of the financing unacceptable.
And I don't I don't disagree with your comments, Commissioner Sullivan, regarding the need and the usage of the building, but I'm torn because we have a valid real estate contract that we committed to and signed, and we're well past the point of being, in my mind, being able to opt out because we have valid financing and the closing is scheduled. So,
Mr. Chairman,
yeah.
I kind of indicated that when I started. I'm kind of laying this down right now for the future too. Is that it's time for us to, back in November when we agreed to this, I've been told that there was a time period between then and now when the loan actually closed. So there was some time after our meeting in November, between then and now, where we could have stopped this deal from going through, because if that was information that I was given, but however, we were never told what that date was, and therefore would not have had a chance to stop the signing of the contract. What was the date the contract was signed?
Thank you, sir.
And Julie, if you want to bring that contract up, it's in the number of items that I sent you. The execution date, county administrator's signature is November 19th, 2018.
It was the same day of the third meeting.
I agree with you on the legality part of this, but I'm trying to also make the point about purchase of private real estate, commercial real estate, that it may not always be the best thing for the county to do when we have thousands of acres of property, including prime property on Palm Coast Parkway in the middle of Palm Coast next to the library that could have been used for both of these functions. Okay, that's it. I don't have anything more to say.
Okay.
I would just like to say, too, as finance director, moving forward in January, after this was approved in November, I did go to Al Hadid just to verify, before we did the work with Neighbors Giblin, our bond counsel on this, to make sure that the work we were going to do was necessary, and if there was an opportunity to bring this back for reconsideration, we would do so. And that's when I was informed that basically the horse had left the stable, we had signed the agreement, and we must move forward.
No other comments or questions from the commission at this point? All right. Do we have a motion here?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve item 8B.
We have a motion. We have a second. I will hand over the gavel to you, Commissioner Sullivan, and second the motion, so we have some discussion on it.
Yes. At this point, we have a motion and a second for item 8B, and I think it's public comment now. So we can have public comment now on item 8B, what we've just been discussing.
Good morning again, George Mayo. Since we may be locked into buying this property, is it possible, maybe a thought of that it's immediately after we buy it, just put it up for sale again? And whether we lose a minimum amount of money or whatever, but at least retrieve some of our money back. And henceforth, going forward, any property purchases that the county might want to make, ask the county to not bundle them. If you want to purchase fire equipment and software, keep that separate. This way, any property purchases can be looked at in their entirety on its own. So you can't say, well, we need the fire truck and we need the software, so we have to buy the building. So I think any property purchases from private entities would be best served by keeping that as a separate thing. Thank you.
Any additional comments? Yes.
And Celia, I have total 100% confidence in Lori Bailey Brown. As a matter of fact, I'm still praying she'll be our permanent county administrator because I don't know how she does it. I think it's disgraceful that these, and I thank you, Commissioner Sullivan, with all my heart. There's no money to fix our decrepit water system. The sheriff's employees are all over the place, but there's money to buy a huge, oversized building for our tax collector, who certainly doesn't need it, and we lose that from the tax roll. I think in the future, any contract, I have a broker's license since 1986. This contract should be public, it should be published, it should be part of the backup, it should be on the agenda. Everybody should be able to see it. And the county should stop signing asinine contracts that does not give the county an out up until the very last day. If the county can't get financing on other projects, well, I think that's a very good excuse. You can't get money to fix our water at Plantation Bay, and I have nothing to say about Lori Bailey Brown. I think she's stuck. I think this is another one of Craig Coffey and Al Hadid's deals. I think it is disgraceful, and I hope it stops. I would like to see a copy of that contract with all my years in real estate, just in case. You know, 2 heads are better than 1, 10 heads are better than 2. If there's an out, I think we should go for it. I think it's disgraceful. And to buy that land behind the library, Commissioner Sullivan, God bless you. You really care. Thank you so much. Vote no.
Joan Avocado. Thank you, Commissioner Sullivan. You're working for the taxpayer. I would like this to be an example for Bing's Landing. This lease that was signed with Mr. Goodman for $400 a month. And if you go up there and you see the clientele that he has morning, noon, and night, and for our county to collect, it was $400 in the lease. Now I believe it might be $600. This is a disgrace to the taxpayers. The money, $600 that's coming into the county. And we, Plantation Bay residents, have a very grave problem with our water. The county doesn't have money to meet grants, let alone buy buildings where you can barely pay. And who's paying for it? The citizens, the taxpayers. This has to stop. And Commissioner Sullivan, you're an asset to Flagler County. And I wish I could say that about you, Mr. O'Brien, and you, Mr. Hanson, because I could let out a lot of ghosts about you with Bing's Landing and other issues.
Please, no.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Morning, Commissioners. Dennis McDonald. I just wanted to say that sitting in the back of the room listening to the discussion here this morning on this one item, the one thing that kind of pops out at me is that what I hear over and over is a conversation is what you were told, okay? And so when you're in this position and when you have the ability to sign off on things, certainly from my experience, when I had to sign off on things, I had to know it, I had to read it, I had to understand it, okay? And to rely on other people to just tell you things, that's where you get into trouble. So if we could avoid that in the future, it would be really helpful. I appreciate it, and I'm sure everybody in the county would. And Dave, thanks for getting into this.
Any further public comment on this?
Mr. Hadid.
Mr. Hadid?
Yeah, just a couple of comments to the board before they vote. It would, because we are using particular loan proceeds from a governmental program, there are obviously restrictions on how we use those monies. it would not be permissible for us to purchase the property and then put it back on the market for sale. That is not the purpose. That would not be an authorized purpose of these funds. That's number one. Number two, at the time that Ms. Lori Bailey Brown questioned me about what our options were, we had already sent the matter out for quotes from the service, and they had already, ready to close the transaction. So the items were already bundled. The matter was already formed up and available to be disposed of. A comment was made about somehow this is my deal. I did not work on this transaction. I would have reviewed it for form, but when I review things for form, I'm only looking to see if there are any illegal or improper provisions. It was a standard form option agreement. I think that's all. I'm trying to remember all the various things that were said. I think that's all. If there's any questions from in people's comments or your own thoughts, I'm prepared to answer.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, for Mr. Hadid, what I want to know is between the time we approved this in November at a meeting, was there any time frame in which the board could have reversed the decision and said, no, I'm buying this building?
If we had not gone to the point that we found ourselves in, yes, there was an opportunity for material adverse changes.
It was an inspection.
We could provide a notice, of inspection.
So there was some time.
Yes, there were some okay. Points in the process where we could have reached a conclusion that would have taken us out of the transaction.
And I think that's part of what I'm saying is that since there was some period of time there, I think I feel that I was against buying this building from the beginning, but I don't think I ever knew there was a drop dead date where at some point the clock ran out on any possibility of us reversing the decision on the Sears building.
And Mr. Telfer may have some additional comment, as again, he administered the contract and dealt with all the individuals. I did not. I had no contact.
Well, one of the things I did want to respond to is that the contract itself has been part of the public record since that November meeting, so there was no attempt to hide this or not reveal it. It's been out there, and if anybody has any requests to see it again, we'd be happy to transmit it to them.
My problem is that that's true of many things we do, but in this case it was a board action, and therefore when the action was completed, where there was no chance of us doing anything about it, it would have been nice to know what that date was.
Well, we did not, Commissioner, the one thing I'll have to differ with you on is when we undertook this transaction, we approved the purchase of the building and we empowered the county administrator to deal on our behalf on the contract, all the steps of the contract. And so we never said, come back to us in 30 days or come back to us after an inspection. We said, we approved. We can go back and check the public record. We said we're going to purchase this building, and we're going to follow the steps. And along the way, if there was a red flag or something to be brought back to us for consideration, that was incumbent upon the county administrator who represents us in these transactions to bring it back to us, and that did not happen.
As I remember the way this went down, Mr. Chairman, there was as soon as we approved this, and as I say, I was against it from the start for some other reasons. I think the administrator was aware that there was things were changing, and the need for this building was beginning to become in question. I just say it's too bad because now I agree we're buying this building and we can't sell it. So. And to make it useful for anybody in the county, it's going to have to be fixed, and that's going to cost additional funds. So in addition to nailing our budget for the next 5 years at $434,000 a year, we're going to have to deal with this, and when somebody comes by and we've got an urgent project that needs to get done, this is going to affect how much money we're going to have available to do that. So that's all I don't disagree with what you're saying. I'm just saying there was there was concern that at that point in time, as soon as this was approved in November, there were a number of people, including the tax collector, who said she didn't need all that room.
I think you're
At that
you're
point,
still.
is there any other public comment? If not, we'll call the question. Oh, I think you've already spoken on this, right?
You closed public comment already.
Yeah, I've closed public comment. We'll call the vote. All those in favor of proceeding forward with item, which is now 8B, basically for the authorizing of the loan from the Florida Local Government Finance Corporation, signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed?
Nay.
No.
Okay, motion dies. Well, you want to finish this item?
The motion fails due to a tie vote. We'll go on. I will now pass the gavel back to our chairman.
Okay. Before we go on to next business, I believe we probably need to get that financing for the other items. Staff, I think we need to get that financing for those other items straightened out, because we still need to be purchased. And that was approximately half the amount on the loan, correct?
Yes, sir. We can
Yeah.
go back and draw up a different loan accordingly.
And I would also ask Mr. Hadid for guidance on where we stand with this contract. If we're not approving this takedown on the financing, where we stand with a real estate contract that we committed to and already executed. So. Item 8C. This is consideration of an interlocal agreement with Halifax Hospital Medical Center, allowing delivery of medical and mental health services to residents of Flagler County. Someone here from Halifax Hospital wish to talk to us?
Hi, Kelly Parsons-Kwiatek. I'm the General Counsel at Halifax Health. This is an interlocal agreement. The whole idea is it's essentially a no-cost contract. It keeps the status quo. We provide services for Flagler County residents, including trauma services, neonatal services, mental health services. We have been challenged in court, as you might have read, about serving and working outside of our district. And so this just protects those services and makes sure that we can continue operating in cooperation with each other.
Mr. Hadid, you reviewed this interlocal agreement?
Yes, I have. They sent a draft, and I made a number of changes to it.
Okay, and those are reflected in the document we have?
That's correct.
Okay. Any questions, commissioners?
No, I think it's a good thing to do. Get out of the way.
Okay. Entertain a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve item 8C.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Open it up to public comment. Anyone wish to comment on what is now item 8C? Seeing none, I'll close public comment, bring it back to the board for a vote. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, none. That motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I will now move into the public hearings section of our agenda. Item 9A is quasi-judicial, and that's application number 3163, which is request for approval of an amendment to the plan unit development standards for Huntington Villas at Hunters Ridge PUD. Owner Howard Lefkowitz with BADC Huntington Communities LLC, and we are at where are we here? This is quasi-judicial, so we don't need to disclose, correct?
You will need to provide any disclosures of any communication, sorry.
I apologize. Anything?
None.
Okay.
None
Mr.
from me.
Sullivan? None for me. And Mr. Hanson is left the dais, so we'll move on.
Yes,
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioners, Adam Engel, Planning Director. I've got a quick PowerPoint on this. I think Julie's going to get it queued up there. Just to give you some familiarity with the project and what's being requested. And this is the location map. Usually start out with this. This is on both sides of Hunters Ridge Boulevard in that southeast corner of Flagler County. At the south Ashton look is in Volusia County. And you'll also see that area just on the other side of Ashford Lakes that's in Volusia County. And so this is a specific amendment to what's known as the Huntington Villas project. Villas is the development that's on both sides of that Hunters Ridge Boulevard, south of Airport Road. And then overall, you'll hear a discussion with this that there's a part of this amendment is an amendment to the amenity center, which is common for Huntington Village. And that's the project then that includes Huntington Woods, Huntington Lakes, that larger development that's all part of what was combined under the ownership of BADC, the group that came in after Tim and Todd Phillips had sold this portion of Hunters Ridge.
Mr. Engel, can I just stop you one second?
Yes, sir.
Commissioner, this is a quasi-judicial matter, and just asking if you have any ex parte communication to disclose.
I've had no communication.
Thank you, sir. Sorry.
No problem, sir. And so if you'll look there on this graphic on the east side of Hunters Ridge Boulevard, you'll see the plats that have currently been proposed, currently been approved. A Phase 1A plat that's at the north end of the development with those lots that are there, and then that amenity area being that cleared area. If you can see it basically in the center of your graphic, that's the amenity site. And then just to its south, the two cul-de-sacs that run off, those are the other lots that were approved. That's Phase 1B of this Huntington Villas project. If this ultimately is approved as proposed by the applicant, there will be an amendment to the amenity site to shrink that area down to be able to provide 4 new lots, 2 new duplex sites. And so among the changes that are being requested here mainly is a reconfiguration of the villas project based on the change in the market. And so not something uncommon that we've had come before us before. Future land use, as you can imagine, mixed use low, consistent with the Hunters Ridge DRI. PUD is in place, also consistent with the Hunters Ridge DRI. And then including these now so that you can have these graphics, flood zone X. You do have a small portion of flood zone A at the very bottom that's not an area that's slated for development with this project. And so to summarize where we're at, the application came in November 2018. This does amend specifically the previous ordinances that approve the development project here. It does revise the land uses for the use for lots, roadway tracks, stormwater tracks, wetland conservation tracks, common area open space tracks, including the recreation center track that I mentioned. It revises allowed building types to the market conditions. There was a request for public community meeting and input that was made at the Planning and Development Board. The developer responded that there were several meetings that were held, and they've included that information within your packets, May 23rd, 2017, July 12th, 2018, December 13th, 2018, and then most recent January 10th, 2019. And those all were, as the developers described, and as I'm sure they'll also comment on, were opportunities where they had advanced their proposal for this amendment, again, amending and restating the development agreement for Huntington Villas itself. This is a graphic that I prepared for the planning board, and other than being a chart, it shows at least the intent here with this. In the blue on the bottom, those were showing the counts for the 2015 adopted. The red would be the 2019 proposed. And so what this math and all this together is supposed to be showing on your bottom left, the building count, so that you'd have now, before 14 duplexes, now 49 duplex buildings. And then on the right-hand side, the corresponding unit count for those. So realizing that duplex buildings end up being doubling of the unit count. So before you had 28 duplexes proposed, duplex units, now you have 98 duplex units that are proposed. And so that you can hopefully see with this graphic the mix that was involved there. You had more quads here, and so those quads are being reduced and mainly being taken up with duplexes. And if you can imagine conceptually what you need with a duplex versus a quad, your end units create the larger setback requirements. And so you're going to need then more land area. If you're going from quad buildings where you have the lot configuration of 2 interior lots, remember these are being sold as that lot. When you buy it, you're buying that unit itself with the dirt underneath it. These aren't multifamily. These are actual subdivided lots. And so when you switch from the quad down to the duplex, you're going to need more land area because you're going to have more end units that end up coming part of this. And so that's why the developers come back and said, I need those extra duplexes back on the amenity site. And then from the land use acreage standpoint, those are basically about equal. There is a greater number, again, as we mentioned, on the acreage for the lots, 16.26 acres before, 17.21 acres as proposed being used for the lots themselves. You do have that corresponding reduction also in open space, 7.44 down to 6.27, principally the reduction in the area for the amenity site. Stormwater stays about the same, just a little increase there in kind of sharpening the pencil to do the better math. Both your roadways and wetlands stay identical between the proposed and the currently adopted from 2015. This is the graphic that was part of your packet that shows the configuration. It does show in clouded form the amenity area, and then the additional 4 lots that are shown there to its northeast corner. And so you have the 4 lots, 2 duplex sites. The south portion of the development basically stays the same, so it's on 2 different sheets. And you also had a graphic that included the sidewalk areas where the sidewalks are going to be constructed, and so this was not in very great detail on your packet with the ordinance. It was pretty hard to read, and so where you can see these solid, hard dashed line that's there, the black line, that's where the sidewalk would be placed along both sides of the streets and in quite a few areas along one side, and just a few of those provide that amenity within the development. And so I've included in the summary in the staff report, I've included some of the comments that were made, the folks who have made those comments. What had come out of the planning board was the concept from the residents, probably the bulk of them I can summarize by saying that don't have the benefit of the minutes. But I've reviewed them. I've gone in and reviewed the audio. I've put this into the report that the residents, by and large, had said, we understand the rationale behind taking down that amenity package. There was a very ambitious package. As the developers described it, no one's particularly contested it. It was to be a private operation. It was intended to bring in residents and others from outside and being able to generate some profit and being able to be sustaining, self-sustaining. But the developer has come back and said that's not something that's really feasible. Part of the rationale with that was not just that certainly there's a cost factor. There's an ongoing cost factor with this once it's handed over to an HOA, but also what they've described is that the residents that have come in don't really want those amenities, so they want something that's smaller. The call from the residents that did speak at the planning board seemed to be that we understand that rationale, but leave us whole as far as the area of the amenity parcel. If we decide later on as part of the HOA to come in and put in the tennis court or the pickleball court or whatever it may be that we may want later, then leave us the land area. Don't take away the land area from us. And so you'll see then that planning board did not have the option of having an alternate recommendation in their recommendation for approval to you. But based on that discussion, I added in an alternate recommendation and described this somewhat in some detail in your staff report. I have talked with the applicant since then. Certainly they're not particularly interested in following that path at all. That there are the 4 lots, the 2 duplexes. Remember, the units are staying the same here, 154 units overall, so no net increase in anything that we've got going on here with this. And then another part that to tell you then, where we've given this recommendation to you, where you have that planning board recommendation that's come forward, in speaking with Administrator Cameron about this, he said, why make a recommendation at all? Something fairly common, I think we've seen that before in some of our analysis we've had of St. Johns County, where they kind of come out and say, here's the stuff. It doesn't have staff then acting as the advocate for the applicant, which too often it seems like we're doing. And with this one, if anything I could tell you is that it's very clear what's being requested. There is a decrease in the size of the amenity package that's being offered at the amenity center. The amenity center is clearly getting smaller. There are some of the amenity features that are being reduced, and the land area of the amenity parcel itself is being reduced. And so if that path is followed and the agreement is approved as proposed, the site plan is approved as proposed by you today, then the next step that will happen is we'll have to come back in and do a replat on that initial phase 1A, because we had the recreation tract shown a certain size, and now there's going to be some lots in there that weren't there before. And so that's the next step that will happen if that occurs. If instead you deny that aspect and maybe still approve the mix on the duplexes, then the developer has to go and figure out where he's going to make up those 4 duplex lots, somewhere where they could do that. They could do that. They could have some additional wetland impacts. It would be a cost. Let them speak to that if that comes up as something that you want to entertain further. And so I think that there's some options that are available to you without having us come out and say, hey, here's something we're advocating for versus one position or the other. That my goal always is trying to find a way to make everyone, maybe not winners and losers, but being able to make everybody at least whole with this. And so that when we advocated that alternative recommendation, I was trying to say, hey, I heard you from the planning board. Let's see if we could do this where we can get the developer where he changes the mix, but we keep the amenity area intact. Again, the developer's not particularly interested in that, and I think some great feedback from our administrator now on that, saying, let's let you then be the arbiters with this, receive those public comments, take staff's report, but in the future, I think that's a good foreshadowing of what you're going to see from us more, is we're not going to be taking those positions that are necessarily so cut and dry. We're going to be bringing those forward to you and hopefully acting as the impartial arbiters that we hope to be. So with that, I am advancing then. I'm not going to change anything, at least with the recommendation that had gone to the planning board, recommendation for approval. The basis on that, again, being that it does meet the requirements of the comprehensive plan, the land development code, and the DRI development agreement. So you have those 3 at play. And just to emphasize that point here on the record, it's one of the questions that also came up early on. Is this amenity something that's required within the development order of the DRI? And the answer is no, that this is not. This is not something that's specifically identified. This is above and beyond. This is a recreation area just for that Huntington Village project, the portion that's owned and operated presently by BADC. It's something that they've provided as an amenity to be able to help market their project, and so that this isn't something that is required for compliance with the development order itself. And so very similar to what we provided to the Planning and Development Board, our recommendation is adoption of the ordinance. We've got the caption there as stated in your packet. And then the alternative recommendation is what I've mentioned to you already. And so that's then that you still approve the ordinance, but that you then direct the applicant then to come back and leave the recreation tract R1 intact without any changes there, and leave them to come up with where they're going to make up those last 4 lots. On behalf of the applicant, Mr. Howard Lefkowitz is present, along with counsel Michael Woods with the firm of Cobb & Cole. And I think you've got some folks in the public also want to speak on this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. I'm available for any questions you have.
Chairman, just one question kind of off for Huntington Village, where do they get their wastewater treatment and pure water?
Their wastewater treatment and water is provided through an interlocal agreement with the city of Ormond Beach.
Okay, so they get it from outside the
county.
Okay.
And fire? Isn't there a station just south of there or something?
There's
a small
there's
one?
A station just to the east on Airport Road there through the mutual aid. Ormond would come if we requested that service. We also have our service, our station at Rima Ridge,
right,
and
correct.
so we're kind of, it's right in the middle, pretty close. But we'd be the primary responders.
Mr. Hanson.
It wasn't clear to me if I like staying with the original recreational area, if you will, amenities area. But it wasn't clear to me what the impact was if we do that. If we take your second option, what was the impact on the builder? Does he lose 4 duplexes?
That's one option for him, and so that and I talked very quick in a sidebar. I'm not intending to speak for him or for that conversation, but one option for him is we've got the high end, we've got the 154 units at the maximum. He could take those out of his program and just it creates. If you can imagine, he's gone through and he's figured his math on a certain number of units, certain number of payers, and so he may then in fact have to further decrease some amenities that he was intending to provide here with this. Short answer I have for you is he could, I don't mean to be so quick as to tell you that it's very easy. He could just find another spot on this land and make up those units. I think in order to do that, he'd have to have some wetland impacts, and that could be a fairly significant lift for the developer to make that happen, and probably something overall we'd want to discourage anyway. If it's currently a wetland, you probably don't want to put lots there, but no doubt about it, we've had that history here. But that's an option for him. He can either make it up somewhere else, or he could just drop those out of the program and then have to make up the math some other way for the financials to work.
It was 4 duplexes, correct?
4 lots, 2 duplex, and so there'd be 4 total units. You can see them here on that graphic. It's a little hard, but it's up at that kind of northeast corner of your display, and so that there would be the 4 lots, 2 duplex units, 4 units in total, 4 dwelling units. 2 duplex buildings. I need to say that better.
Any other questions for Mr. Mangle, commissioners? The applicant wants to come forward and make a presentation or discuss anything.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, council members. For the record, my name is Michael Woods with the law firm Cobb Cole, 231 North Woodland Boulevard, DeLand. Here today on behalf of the applicant, BADC, with me as well as Howard Lefkowitz, also with BADC. And my apologies that Mr. Watts could not be here. He is currently on a tarmac in Grand Rapids with snow going sideways at 9 degrees. So a little chilly up where he is. I'm going to be very brief because I know we have some comments from the neighbors that we'd like to speak to, and then I believe it would be our preference to then be able to respond to that accordingly and maybe use the balance of our time in that manner, in that way, with some response from Mr. Lefkowitz. But basically what you have before you is after about 3 years of work on the overall concept for the project, for what BADC is trying to do there, with the revisions, trying to address how the market has moved forward and whatnot. You have a PD revised and restated to kind of clean up certain actions that we've done previously. The main issue that I think we're trying to address, and then there's a consequence with the amenity center, is the changing of the housing product itself, going from the quads down to the duplexes. I do want to emphasize that from a standpoint of impact to the community, to the demands on services, whether that's the services provided by for water and sewer or anything to like, we're keeping neutral on our unit count. And I think when Mr. Lefkowitz comes up, we may even address the ability of that option number, or I guess option 2 that's been proposed by staff. But ultimately, we are not making any changes to the total unit count. What we do have is a project that is still satisfying, particularly for the open space requirements, and your staff, emphasize this as well, the requirements of the DRI. With this facility, even with the reduction, and we're going from 3 acres down to about 2.5 acres, I believe, is kind of the breakdown to that. And for a project of this size, that's a fairly large amenity center to begin with. And that may be what you kind of see the conversation of the thread moving forward here, is that we came up with something large, either because we maxed out our number of units previously because of the wetlands, and that was the remnant parcel that we have there, and now we've got a new kind of approach to how we can develop out there. But the rest of your document is to kind of provide an clarification on the project. You now have some clear information about the sidewalks and where they have to be built and when. I believe that was a discussion from a few months ago that we agreed to. There's some clarifications on easements and eaves, very technical. And then probably the biggest conversation that we had was just clarification on the use of the irrigation ponds. You do have a paragraph in there that's been ironed out that ultimately reuse will be preferred, but until such time as that becomes available from City of Ormond Beach, there's language in the development agreement that provides for how that is to function. There was, another small point about a height clarification for a few particular lots, basically bringing down the allowable height on a handful of those. But then ultimately, we're talking about moving dwelling units from one side of the project over to the other. And it is in any other scenario from an amendment of this kind at this point during the project, it's kind of par for the course, kind of a glitch bill trying to clean up everything that you have here. From a substantive standpoint, you kind of see the reference to that as we move forward certainly prior to planning board. You've got staff recommendation for approval because of what we're hitting from the technical requirements. This document, this amendment is in keeping with your ordinances, it's in keeping with the PD, it's in keeping with the DRI, which is kind of that looming thing that we all have to be worried about from the complexity. But we hit all those points. I think now from the conversation standpoint is to, listen to what the neighbors are saying. They certainly have the right to appear and to raise their concerns and their issues. And I think we've got a pretty good, reasonable response, both from a business standpoint and a practical standpoint, as to what we have heard. And we have heard from them. This is not something that we pay short shrift to. But Mr. Lefkowitz, I think in response to some of those comments from the neighbors, will be able to address that directly for you. Other than that, I'd prefer if we could just kind of open it up to the neighbors to get their comments and then kind of holistically take any of those concerns.
Any questions for the applicant, commissioners? No? Okay. Any other questions for staff?
Not at the moment.
So we can get this further along. Anyone want to make a motion?
Just so go ahead.
To get
Did anybody else want to speak? Or?
Well, I was going to get a motion on the floor in a second and then open it up for public comment.
So, Mr. Chairman, just so I understand, there's two possible motions that we can make on this right now. Is that my understanding?
Yes, and someone has to make one.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to approve 9A with the provision of the alternate recommendation.
I'll second that.
Okay, and the alternate recommendation is?
It's written on our on 9A. It's okay. It's on page 4 of 4.
It's to keep the recreational area the same.
The land area the same, but no comment as to the size of the building or the actual facility. Correct. Right. Okay, so that's a motion. We have a second.
Yes, I second.
Okay. All right. We'll open that up to public comment. Anyone from the public wish to come forward, please.
Good morning. My name is Carol Hodak. I'm a resident at Huntington Village.
Yes, ma'am.
My husband and I purchased what would be our last home to be built in Huntington Village on March 4th, 2016. Thank you. Our salesperson was Sam Crouch, which is employed and was employed by BACD as their marketing director, and he is also the vice president of the HOA. The following is what we were promised when we purchased that we would be getting in amenities. Annuals 3 times a year. Mulching 2 times a year. 3,000 square foot clubhouse, ballroom with fireplace, private bar, catering kitchen, liquor, wine cabinets, and all that to break ground in 2016. The clubhouse would include health club, full-time activities director, aerobics and yoga studio, crafts studio and library, pool and spa complex, card room, 2 bocce ball courts, 6 pickleball courts, fire pit with seating, and all that was what we were supposed to get. And that sounded pretty good, didn't it? And then there's the pond fountain that needed repaired, and they just removed it. Now the possibility is that the CDD will have a reduced size pool. Oh, I'm sorry, I misstated that. Now it is the possibility, let's try that again. Now the possibility is that per the CDD, we will have a reduced size pool with a 1,200 square foot bathhouse and exercise room. When the HOA meeting December 12th, I asked Mr. Lefkowitz, was there a possibility that the pool would not be built? He replied, yes. In application 3163, page 1 of 5 of the summary request, it states, additionally, the site development plan depicts a more limited amenity center on the changing market and demographic characteristics of the residents moving into Huntington Village. I do not feel this is factual. Mr. Lefkowitz was repeatedly said funding was not there to build it. I feel this should have been looked at and funding acquired prior to the advertising of it being part of the community and the other purchased on the premise of getting these amenities. 2018 Florida Statutes 817.44 states, it is unlawful to offer real estate or personal, tangible or intangible, or any services, professional or otherwise, by placing or causing to be placed before the general public by any means whatsoever an advertisement describing such property or services as part of a plan or scheme with the intent to sell such property. The land they are trying to take to build more villas is part of the amenity site land. I feel that.
Go ahead. If you can wrap it up.
I
please.
can.
Okay.
I'm on my last paragraph. I feel the pickleball and bocce ball courts, something beneficial to the residents, would be better suited for the land at question rather than more villas to make up the difference from the developer reducing the number of quadplexes, increasing the number of duplex and triplex. They have already taken so much from us. We'd like to.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Good morning, Commissioners. Jack Bislin, resident of Huntington Village.
A nice uniform you have on there,
I
sir.
was admonished by my fellow red shirt wearers that I was out of uniform as well, so 2 times.
Yes, sir.
I am now retired. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for the opportunity this morning to speak to you. I am a resident. My wife, Cindy, and I built a home in September in Huntington Village. We were promised an amenity center. I think approving this land use change as proposed by the applicant today removes 1/2 acre approximately of that proposed site. And I support Mr. Lefkowitz's opportunity to maximize his investment. I support capitalism, and maximizing his assets and his profits is something I would advocate, but I do not support it being done at our expense. He minimizes a 1/2 acre as inconsequential. My whole life I've been a rule follower. My wife will tell you that. And when we bought our house and signed a contract, we signed up to purchase a home and a lifestyle that included an amenity center. What I don't advocate is changing the rules during the game. And that's how I feel today, that we were promised one thing, and now we have to settle for something less, and it only begs the question, will we be here 6 months from now when his failed business plan of building quads wasn't as lucrative as he originally planned? So again, I won't take all of my 3 minutes. I just wanted to express my personal sentiment because I believe it's probably within the law and your purview to pass this. I stand with the motion that's on the floor to pass but not affect our amenity center. Thank you for your time, and it's a pleasure to see all of you again.
Same here, sir. Thank you. Folks, please refrain from doing that. It takes away from everybody's time. Thank you.
Joan Affatato, my heart goes out to these residents. It sounds like what's happened in Plantation Bay. I think you commissioners should seriously take into consideration what these people are telling you. The builder only cares about the bottom line for his investment. That's why my residents in Plantation Bay are suffering for the water conditions that we have. These people were promised something that the builder is trying to take away. And it's up to you, commissioners, to decide correctly for the residents, not on the side of the builder, because that seems to be the gameplay here in Flagler County. The builder profits. The residents, we're the ones that are paying this in our taxes, and it's not fair. I would appreciate it if you would hear what I have to say. And Mr. Hanson and Mr. O'Brien, I hope you're listening to what I have to say. It's very, very important because you are taxpayers also. But sometimes I wonder what you're thinking about. Thank you for your time.
Next speaker, please.
Good morning, gentlemen. My name is Jim Hodak. I'm a resident. My wife has presented it. I'm also a member of the Board of Directors of the Master Association down there, Hunters Ridge. Mr. Howard Lefkowitz and his attorney, Mr. Watts, from Cobco, provided information to the Planning and Zoning Board concerning the development of a now proposed amenity center that would be constructed at the developer's expense of $700,000 plus, and it would be donated to the community. This was the first time we heard anything about this plan. Part of the presentation consisted of elevations, drawings depicting the in-place location and design of the structure. They also stated that these plans had been presented to homeowners at prior meetings on May the 23rd, 2017, July the 12th, 2018, and December the 12th, 2018. They were not. The meeting on January the 10th, 2019 was a public posted meeting concerning the CDD approval, not the Homeowners Association. Comments were made after the CDD meeting concerning the construction of the amenity center. Homeowners received no written notification of that meeting. We obtained the information from public postings in the newspaper. I attended every meeting mentioned. Never saw any plans regarding the designated amenity center. Any discussion that took place at the aforementioned meeting concerning the amenity center were vague, non-committal, and ambiguous at best. Mr. Lefkowitz repeatedly stated that he had no money to fund the promised center, and financing could not be obtained. We recently received a summary sheet. There's an illustration in a packet I provided you from the developer. There was no reference to that proposed center in the marketing literature. In addition, the amenities referenced are currently in place and are not Huntington Village's facilities. They are amenities located in other locales, the Master Association, Hunters Ridge, which we are entitled to for use by payment of our dues to the Master Association. The benefits listed in the summary sheet was a commitment. Illustration 2 was given to us when we applied and purchased the home. We found that was not fulfilled. It stated the cost that it would be to us. It stated the specific amenities that he would provide. The developer has sold lots making misleading statements and advertising. Now they have requested to shrink the size of the recreational space. Under normal circumstances, review and approval would be required by Hunters Ridge Homeowners Association, but the county has waived that requirement for him.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Next speaker, please.
Good morning. This is Jean Hunt. I live in Huntington Woods. We bought our home in 2017 and was promised the amenity center. We was also told that the amenity center would be finished in 2019. We asked about the gym in the other sections of Hunters Ridge, and there is none available. They said that the homeowners association would pay for us to use the gym at the Halifax Hospital until our gym was built. That lasted for 1 year, and now they refuse to pay that. So we have to pay that. That's another thing that has been taken away. The amenity center was one of the reasons we purchased our home in Huntington Village. And now that's not all going to be taken away, but it's going to be taken away and shrunk down. It is sad that the builder can call the shots with all these people bought into this project wanting the amenity center. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hey, folks. Bob Hydorn, 21 Shearwater Trail, Huntington. As I understand it from the February Commissioners meeting, we're here today to review a zoning change and not what was proposed to be built as a clubhouse. It does not matter to myself or as a resident the configuration of the units, 2, 3, 4 units. As long as it sticks to the approved site plan footprint. Change to a larger number of duplexes requires more green space, but also allows for a higher sale price versus interior units, not changing the overall project margins. Now the developer's asking to change the original site plan, build 2 additional duplexes on green space, originally dedicated, build a clubhouse, which I believe you've already said you kind of agree with not giving them, which I greatly appreciate if I understood it correctly. So just a little bit of history going on that. Some of what's going on. July 29 of 16, I signed a contract to build a home. We also bought directly from an employee of the developer, not a third-party salesperson. We were told about a clubhouse that would have a game room, library, gathering room, some sort of a bar area, tennis, pickleball courts, etc. The developer states that when bought the development 3 years early in 2013, they financially realized expenses would be incurred and beyond what they could afford and decided it was needed to streamline to what they would build. It appears this information was not passed along to the sales team. The developer recalls or states things a little different than what we seem to remember. A letter was passed out last week by the developer stating that the original 10 home buyers, which I believe I was one of, was provided a variety of accommodation incentives because the amenity had not yet been built or started, which included waivers of capitalization fees, of $5,700, et cetera. This was not how it was presented to us. As per sales promotional documents I have at the time, we were given $15,000 incentives, $9,000 discount on the home, $6,000 towards closing costs. I've retired from a national builder, common summer practice, bring in people at a slow time of the year. Nothing was ever mentioned about less of a clubhouse. We were actually told that as per the site plans I also have in a brochure that it will be built in 2 phases. Initially, the first phase was to be estimated to complete in 2.5 years, which it has not been. So at this time, I'm just going to ask that you guys, I'm running out of time, is do not give them those extra 2 lots of the green space so that when the homeowners association takes over, if they want to change it, they can go forward with it and change it. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Morning, everyone. I'm John Dockery. My wife and I reside at 17 Huntington Place in Ormond Beach, Huntington Woods. I oppose the application of 3163 as it was initially presented. With what you've approved so far of the amendment of not allowing those additional units. Because of that, them impending on the tract R1. I've been to all the HOA meetings except for the January 2019 meeting. BADC has verbally conveyed very broad, general changes. that would be happening. Nothing definite, nothing that we could take away and consider and come up with questions. It was a meeting, what? This is what you get. We were promised when we moved in August of 2016. We were promised that the clubhouse would be built in 2017, 2018, and now it's going to be built in 2019. If they had done what they said they were going to do, we wouldn't even be here today, because that land would be used. And as far as the two duplexes on the amenities designated property, our promised facilities will be reduced. We want facilities that we moved because the facilities are going to be a half a block from us so that we can use them. In the humid weather and everything, we're walking outside now. In the clubhouse, okay, it's air conditioned. It's more beneficial for the over 55 group that we have. And as BADC has stated, the 2 new duplexes are needed so that they can keep their unit count as planned. This change is due to their misjudgment of the type of unit housing that would sell. I understand that. So BADC wants to remain whole by diminishing the homeowner's expected amenities. I do not feel that's fair. We should have that property to make use of for amenities. And the other point that I'd like to bring up, since they're mistaken initially about what will sell, can they be wrong in these 4 units, 2 duplexes, that are going to be right next to the existing parking lot? How are they really think these things are going to sell? I don't think so. I thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Any other speakers?
Hi, I'm Julie Chanou. My hubby and I live at 23 Shearwater Place next to Bob, who's been an amazing asset. He understands construction. He understands building. He's run an amazing business that he's just retiring from. But my understanding that I think you need to know all these seniors were promised that they were going to have these amenities and buildings and all the things that they showed us in the beautiful pictures and that. And so we bought there because we understood that's what we were going to get. I mean, we had no reason to think we weren't. So that's what we did. We built this house last year. We just moved in a couple of weeks ago. Had a lot of building issues, but got through it. But I was looking forward to this set of amenities that we were going to have. And now it looks like not only would they change it this time, but what's to stop them to continue reducing and changing and saying, well, you don't really need it because we want the profits and the money from it. Well, we're paying HOA fees to 2 different groups for these amenities. And that's expensive. It's a lot of money. And I think for what we were told we were going to get and what we thought we were going to pay, the 2 are not at all what we were told. So I just think you need to take into consideration these people are not being honest. They're looking out for their own good, and they're not really looking out for the people at all. And these are seniors, and they deserve what they were supposed to get.
Thank you for your comments. Any other speakers?
Jane Gentile, I was going to keep my mouth shut, but my heart goes out to these people because this happens over and over again. I have a suggestion. I cannot remember who the builder was, but my husband and I, before coming here, almost bought in a community in Pembroke Pines because the builder built the amenities and the clubhouse before he built the buildings. I would like the county to investigate, and I'm going to do some research, and I hope everybody does. If it is legal for the county commission to pass an ordinance or an ordinance, making it mandatory that any developer who is going to submit planning, plats, whatever, that says that it's going to include amenities must at least put the money in escrow in full for the cost of the amenities or build the amenities before selling the homes. It's amazing that they say this, because here right now I'm going to be asking under community outreach for something. You have another builder in Flagler County, ICI, Plantation Bay. Come and live in the local charming seaside town of Ormond Beach. We are not in Ormond Beach. We have a postal address of Ormond Beach. This false advertising by developers, there has to be some control. The elected officials can take control. And my heart, as a realtor, as a homeowner, these people in the red, they could be homeowners anywhere, Flagler County. The corruption in this county has got to stop. Caring for the builders and sacrificing people, many of them who come here from other parts of the country, leave their families behind to come for a good life and get screwed. Gentlemen, do something. Don't approve any plats anymore without the amenities in place or the total amount held in escrow by a title company of your choice. Thank you.
Any other speakers?
Morning, I'm Catherine Dockery, and I live in Huntington Village. Of course, I have a red shirt on. My concern about this is when part of the literature that they gave out, or as I call it, the propaganda that they gave out for us to buy, compared Huntington Village and the amenities in Huntington Village with other communities that didn't have those amenities, and what that would mean to the value of our homes. And removing these amenities from our community is going to impact the value of our homes. And it's just not right that the builder should be made whole and the residents are less than whole. So, thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any other speakers? You don't have to raise your hand, sir. You can come on up. I think this gentleman beat you to it, but you'll be glad to be next. Okay, sir?
Good morning again, George Mayo. A general question. Adam had mentioned that there were several meetings between the residents and the developer, and that recordings were made. I'm curious as to whether recordings were made of each and every meeting, and if anybody from the county staff was at those meetings as an independent third-party observer, so that they could say what did go on. Sometimes what had happened in Palm Coast when they had those meetings, Palm Coast would not send anybody, and they would rely on the developer to say, oh, everything went fine and everything this and that. Since then, the Palm Coast has required that, if I'm correct, to have somebody from staff attend these meetings so that they would be a third-party observer to say it didn't work like that. It didn't. I'm not saying that these didn't work out or they won't work out, but I think it's best to have somebody in there in person to represent us. And I'm sure Adam can tell us whether that's true or not. Thank you.
Morning.
Morning, sir.
My name is Tom Murphy. I live in one of the duplexes that have been discussed today. And my heart goes out to the developer that he did poor planning on marketing that he's trying to make up on our back. By the way, this guy, if I remember right, in his speech, which my dad said, if you can't put what you want to say in a paragraph, watch for the lies. And I can't believe...
Sir, please address us, please, sir. You have to address us, please, sir.
I can't believe that he could say a lot of people don't want these amenities. I'd like him to produce them. And, you know, I have to pay my Visa bill. I can't call that company and say, oh, I'm sorry, I don't have the money to pay it. So I hope you get from my attitude is that it stinks. And if you people, you all look like respectable people, and who, by the way, is the commissioner for the villas in that area? Which one of you guys will admit to be?
I think it's me. It's off Airport Road. I've been down there and looked.
Yeah, it's Hunter's Ridge.
Yeah, I've been down there and looked, and I'm aware of it.
And I like your name, Mr.
I like yours, and I like your shirt.
Thank you. We were promised many times. One time I was told that, well, after 50 houses are built, we'll start the amenity center. The lies never stopped. And for someone to say that we don't need it because he said it, it's certainly not true. It's the reason Maureen and I moved from Orange County, where we'd spent 50 years, and taking care of a pool. I didn't want to take care of it, but I wanted to use one. Now, if things go your way, we'll probably never see anything but a dirt patch. And that is just not right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your comments. Any other speakers? Okay. No.
I live in Canterbury Woods, right on the county line. About 40 or 60 acres has just been tilled immediately behind our house. The height of it is quite high compared to Canterbury Woods streets and 16-year development. I'm very concerned about the drainage. There's already been water in the backyard, and I have a picture here that shows that the soil is at the top of a 4-foot
Please speak
fence.
into the mic, ma'am.
The soil is at the top of a 4-foot fence already. And so when development goes in there right against our homes, basically, what will the drainage be? And so I just wanted to point that out, that it's already a bit of a problem with the way it runs down. And when paving is there and foundations, I just don't know what it'll be.
Okay, thank you. Any other speakers? Okay. If not, I'll close the public comment section on our motion, bring it back to the commission. Questions, comments for staff?
Just to clarify, I think we split. Our other commissioner's not here today, and down in that area, it's a little tricky. Is exactly who does what, but I run all the way down to Ormond in my district, so it may be also Mr. Mullins may also have part of that there. But that's all I have to say.
Well, our motion that's on the floor right now and seconded is to not allow any reduction in the size of that amenity. Correct, Ms. Sullivan? That's what we're doing.
The area.
Yeah, got it.
Okay.
Right.
I'm sorry, sir. You Mr. Lefkowitz? Yes, please, come on. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
I beg your pardon.
It was a long break. It was
Yeah.
a long break.
No, I didn't know whether I should have come up as when you called for the other word, wait for a clarification. I'm Howard Lefkowitz, BADC. I wore my red shirt because I have as much concern for the community as the other group of people that are here today. I want to make just a couple of points of clarification. I'll just take a minute to make a couple of other points. First off, somebody said that this falls under the auspices of the Community Development District, the CDD. That is not the case whatsoever. The CDD has nothing to do with this amenity. It is outside of it. It's completely privately owned. That's a terribly important point to make public. Secondly, I could spend a lot of time refuting why I've been called such a liar. I don't think it serves any purpose. There are things that I understand happen the way that I think they happen. There are people here that think that they happened a different way. The other thing that I think it's important for you to understand is that with the single exception of the last gentleman who talked, I did not build these houses. We did, in fact, develop the property, or we acquired the property partially developed. I am not the builder, and I cannot fully respond to a lot of things that builders say. I can respond to some things that Mr. Crouch, who was referred to, said he did in fact work for me, and part of what was said was in fact true. There were representations made that were not what is currently before you today. What's important to understand, though, is a couple of things relative to Adam's presentation, and then I'll address just that other particular point. First off, there seems to be some question as to amount of open space. These folks think that we're taking a half an acre of open space and using it for solely our benefit for two additional buildings, 4 additional units. In fact, what's happened is that space was substituted on the other side of the community. When you saw the photograph, the original photograph of the layout, we took what was 105 dwelling units on the west side of Hunters Ridge Boulevard, cut it to 101 units, and put the other 4 over there so that there's equanimity in the number of dwelling units. The other reason that's important is, in fact, we reduced the quadruplexes, and it wasn't because we couldn't sell them. They're actually, to be honest with you, easier to sell because the interior units are less expensive. They're difficult to build is the primary reason that we reduced it. Duplexes are very desirable and saleable, but when you take a duplex, and Adam made this point, you end up with more open space than you had if you have a quadruplex. You basically end up with 7.5 feet to your side property line by 80 feet in length. When you add all that up for the total number of units you're talking about, we actually created a net half an acre additional open space on the west side. Now, and I'm sorry I didn't take the time to talk with Adam about that ahead of time, which is why it didn't end up in the proposal. But there is an equivalency in open space in this particular plan. The other thing that's important for you to know is that this community was originally approved for 330 dwelling units. When it was originally laid out, there's so much open space and the rest of it's wetlands. 330 dwelling units were laid in there. When the 3 acres, it was 2.9 acres allocated for the amenity package came about, it came about because that space was left over. There was enough room to put in all of the other units, and we still had 3 acres left over, or the subsequent approval had those 3 acres left over for the amenity. Normally, an amenity this size, and I can tell you because I've done about 35 projects over my 40-year career, which also makes me as old or older than a lot of my residents. Normally, you would allocate somewhere between an acre to an acre and a half for the amenity the size that we had. They're just plain as extra acreage there. And the reason that I put out last week's presentation to the homeowners, which I asked Adam to also, I gave to Adam so he could provide it to y'all, is if you look at that half an acre where these 2 duplex buildings are going to go, you'll see that they're substantially covered by courts. They're hard surface. Okay, we're not changing open space for hard surface that didn't already exist. On top of that hard surface moved to the south into other open area that now is open area again. The other thing you'll notice on that drawing that I put out is that I purposely put on 2 more courts plus 2 bocce ball courts in the new 2.5 acre design to demonstrate that not only is there room for courts, these folks are not losing a thing for future, there's room for 6 more courts or even more in that particular area. We didn't do anything that brought down the integrity of the project, of the amenity project that we're currently trying to put into place. Now, the thing that was not emphasized, and is really the most important part of all of this, is that when I inherited this particular project, and there's a long story as to why I inherited it, and incidentally, I'm not an equity owner in this project. I'm a hired hand, and there's a whole story that goes with that. But when I inherited this project for dealing with,
The original concept that was on the table was a privately owned $5+ million, almost $6 million facility that once built, the members of the association, our 330 dwelling units, would end up having an increase in their dues by $1,200 per year in order to support this big mammoth $6 million facility. Okay. In addition to that, that privately owned amenity was going to be leased to the association, and it's black and white in the original association documents. It would have cost the association something in excess of $250,000 a year at full build-out. In addition to that, in order to service that mammoth facility, it was opened up to, I believe it was 500 total residents. It was either 500 or 600, but I believe it was 500 total residents, and we've only got 330, which basically means that the other 200 people, in order to support this mammoth facility, would have to come from outside of Huntington. When you stop and you think about all of that, as we did, first off, we didn't have the money when we acquired this place to build it. This was coming out of the 2014 and the recession, and we were very honest and upfront with our people. Okay, when one of the gentlemen got up and said we got a $5,700 discount, and somebody else said that we got discounts on our houses. There was a bunch of other commitments, accommodations that were made to these folks because what this originally advertised concept just plain couldn't physically and economically be built. What we finally got to the point of doing, and I was as honest as I could be with our folks through all of these meetings, I told them we didn't have the funding resources. We now have the funding resources. We've crossed 50 sales in the community. We have another 30 some odd, approximately 30 pre-sales not delivered at this point in time. Okay, we have almost 80 people currently within the community at this point, or coming into the community that's defined. Okay, and I've got over here 8 or 10 people.
Excuse me, Mr. Lefkowitz.
Yeah.
Let's try to wrap it up, okay? Because our rules of procedure say 10 minutes, and your attorney had some time there up front. So I know it's disjointed, but if you could do that, I appreciate that, sir.
I'm sorry, sir.
Thank you, sir.
I'm just trying to get it down. The sum and substance of all of this is I've got 8 or 10 people who are unhappy for whatever reason they're unhappy, and I've got 250 more people. 250 more people who are anticipating coming in here who don't know the first thing about this. So all I can tell you, if y'all adopt the motion that you've got, okay, you'll eliminate 4 units, which will cost me about $150,000 in revenues. I've got $700,000 allocated for building this amenity. We've already advertised that, of which we've already put the parking in. That other $150,000 is going to come from somewhere, and it will probably come out of whatever we've got. I'm not putting additional money into it. So that's as honest and as straight as I know how to tell you. I don't see cutting off our noses by taking those 4 units out of there. There's just no purpose in it. Thank you very much for your time, and I'm so happy to answer any other questions.
Any questions for Mr. Lefkowitz, commissioners? Thank you, sir. All right. Any last comments or questions for commissioners? I guess I haven't said anything. Again, these are quasi-judicial matters, which means we have to judge whether the amendment to the PUD development standards is in compliance with the comp plan and the future land use map, correct? And as you said, the amenity building is not required as part of the DRI. Our motion is to approve this item with no reduction in the acreage, correct, or the land, designated land for the amenity. And I think that's a good compromise and something that I can support along with staff's recommendation that it's in compliance. So that's how I would vote on this matter. Any other comments?
No.
Okay. I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion to approve this item with the alternative recommendations to that the amendment would the condition that the 4 new duplex lots be located outside of Tract R1 and that Tract R1 remain as originally platted through the plat of Huntington Villas Phase 1A. Please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, none. All right, that motion carries unanimously. Thank you. All right. We'll move on to agenda item 10, which we'll start with county administrator reports and comments. Mr. Cameron.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It has been an interesting week. We have engaged in review of the most pressing items that we have facing us, which would be Plantation Bay, the Sheriff, and Bing's Landing. We've made some progress on all of those. Staff has brought in some experts to look at alternatives at Plantation Bay to spending $5 million immediately on an RO plant. And we think that we have a solution that costs much, much less, even as little as a few $1,000s, that may help us greatly improve water quality. I hate to expend $5 million when the most pressing problem is the wastewater plant, because if it should fail, we would have some major concerns. So we're proceeding with that, and we should be able to present our findings to you and within a short time in a workshop environment. The sheriff, as you know, our county engineer was able to prevail upon the consultants to get the reports out, and that gives us some clearer direction. We believe that as early as next week, we will be able to have information and alternatives in front of you that would allow you to consider a direction you want to take. It will depend on some additional information on the cost of some of the alternatives coming in, but we're working hard on that. With regard to Bing's Landing, I personally reviewed it in addition to these other two projects, and we're developing the pros and cons of the various approaches and the cost tags to the county that would be associated with any of those. So just wanted you to give you that progress update for a week's worth of work. I do want to go on record as saying that I have had the opportunity to interview one-on-one with most of your upper-level management, and I am really impressed with the quality of personnel that we have in Flagler County. I look forward to empowering them to use all of their skill sets to solve some of the problems that we have here. I have had a tremendous amount of cooperation working with the clerk on the financial software issue. As you see, we came to a point that we could agree to move forward. I found him very, very receptive, and his staff very receptive to cooperating and working together. I am really impressed with our county attorney. He has been an invaluable asset to me, and he has helped me work through a couple of the tricky problems. He's been very accessible and supportive. And I would also like to just publicly thank Lucy and Christy. I don't think I'd have made it through the week without them. I don't think you can find better executive support anywhere, and I am very grateful for all of that. I have had a chance to talk one-on-one with most of the commissioners, some of them several times, and I have really enjoyed the level of support and the concern for having the right information to make these decisions. Myself and staff are committed to give you that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Hadid.
No report. Thank you.
Okay, do we have anything, any items for commission actions? Commissioner
I have none.
Erickson?
I have none.
Just one possible action. One of the things I attended over the weekend was our Congressman Michael Waltz's class of 23 Academy nominations that was held down at Spruce Creek High School. And I wanted to at least mention the names of the Flagler County nominees. Regrettably, none of them got the final actual entrance into one of the academies, but I wanted to mention their names. It's Leon Paul Deneen, Flagler Palm Coast High School; Corey Joseph Pryor, Matanzas High School; Seamus John Hackett, Flagler Palm Coast High School; and Leon Paul Deneen, Flagler Palm Coast High School. It's a very tough environment to qualify, even as a nominee. So I wanted to make sure that I congratulated them, and it's possible we might want to send them a note from the county congratulating them on their nomination.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Anything else, Commissioner Sullivan?
Nope.
Actions? Nope. None for the chair. Open it up to community outreach. Again, this is a 30-minute time period allocated for public comment for items not on the agenda, and each speaker gets up to 3 minutes to address the commission. And please approach the podium and identify yourselves.
Yes, George Mayo, Palm Coast. I'm glad Adam stayed. I would like to ask again if when we have any meetings with developers, and whether it's this one or any others going forward, if we always send somebody from our staff to be a witness and or record it. And as I asked before, I forgot my note. What was it? Oh, to separate any land purchase that the county may go forward and not bundle it with fire trucks or whatever. If you wish to bundle buying a fire truck and a backhoe and a pickup, that's one thing. But I think, as we saw now, that they have to rewrite the purchase order for that fire truck and whatever. So therefore, going forward, I ask that you ask the staff, any purchase going forward of private property would be kept separate. This way, you don't have to go forward with further work and rewriting, et cetera. Thank you. Oh, and Fat Tuesday tomorrow. Happy Fat Tuesday. Let's go party.
Jane Gentile, Youth Plantation Bay, thank you. Commissioners, this is the third time in front of community outreach I've asked, and I did not get an answer, if we're going to have a moratorium on any building in Plantation Bay. If not on building, I hope the county administrator, Mr. Cameron, who says he realizes it's a serious issue, I would like a commitment that the 97 pending FDE permits, that FDEP will not allow the developer to add 97 homes to the wastewater situation if the county administrator does not sign. I would like the county administrator, through the chair, to guarantee us that he will not sign anything until we get to the bottom of the issue of this very serious matter. And I think there should be a moratorium. This is the third time I am asking for the moratorium. I'd also would like us to be involved in whatever plans that are being done. There's carbon dioxide that was been recommended to me for on a water side temporarily, a 90-day pilot study, because we have issues with the water, although the wastewater is critical. But we have a crisis. We need a moratorium. We need a moratorium, and we need confirmation that Mr. Cameron will not allow another 97 homes. I want an answer before I leave today. Two other things I would like to bring up before my time is up. I'd like to work with Mr. Erickson. We do need a trauma center here.
Have some information for
Great,
you in a minute.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, the two other things very quickly. Al Hadid, who's gone from hero to zero in my eyes, fought very successfully against vacation rentals. We have two terrible bills this year, House Bill 987, Senate Bill 824. I think you might consider speaking with Jay Gardner, because what will happen is that these bills will now also attempt to destroy homeowner association restrictions. I certainly did not buy a home, and as a realtor, single family, to be next to weekend bing-bang parties. And Flagler County, all of Florida, will be destroyed. I need a commitment that this commission is going to fight these bills tooth and nail. Mr. Hadid, you get paid enough money. You were a leader several years ago. It's about time you got off your rear and got up to Tallahassee and fight these two bills that are worse than any bills we've ever faced before. Don't laugh at me.
Any other speakers this morning? Not, I'll close the community outreach portion of our meeting. Bring it back for some final commission comments or reports. Commissioner Erickson?
I've been working a little bit on the question with regard to trauma center. As I've learned, there's 44 trauma center districts in the state of Florida. So on the first thing, that does in fact suggest that there are some counties that don't have a trauma center, that it is something that has to go through Tallahassee, has to be approved by Tallahassee, et cetera, before we do anything. That's where I am right now. That one, the suggestion was get our own here, but I guess as long as we're as close to Halifax as we are, we're going to have to live with that at least initially. But it is, in fact, the state, and I see our new person waving his head a little bit. If you could add a little bit more to that. Yes?
That is a difficult hill to climb because you're opposed by existing trauma centers for
Correct.
obvious reasons. And if the county wanted to move forward with that, it would take a serious lobbying effort to get that done.
Well, that was, I guess that's what I got, when with the fact that we've got 60 plus counties and we've only got 44 districts right now. It's not one for every county.
Yes, it's a difficult hill to climb to get a certificate of need for that.
I'll keep on it, Jane.
Anything else, Commissioner Erickson?
No, sir.
Commissioner Hanson?
I attended the Friday event with out at the Cattleman's Hall with all the facilities and stuff we have available for the less fortunate in our county. I was a little alarmed. I didn't think it was well attended, but my hat goes off to all the people who were out there to help, and all the people in the organizations to help our homeless and to help our less fortunate people in our county. It was a pleasure to be out there. Thanks.
So you've got the free haircuts and all kinds of different activities. I know the presenters, the permanent staff are there, et cetera, to work with the people as they come in. And yes, I did. They still selling hot dogs outside the front door?
No.
No? Okay.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Yeah, just I attended. I think I got there just after you left, and one of the reasons there was probably a little less attendance there, we had the job fair, which was well attended, and over at the college, I went to that, and that job fair was sensational. And the difference now, there are over 50 employers looking for employees, and less people looking for jobs because the whole thing is turned. If you're qualified and you're a candidate, you'll probably get a job, and you could have gotten a job at the job fair last Friday easily. And then the other thing, since we've had a lot of tough things to talk about today, one of the joys of being a commissioner is opening the baseball season, and we did that Saturday morning at our fields. There were more people there this year, good support from the community businesses supporting the teams, and it's all ages. It starts with the little T-ballers and works its way up to high school age students. So there were more people there this time, and it always gives you a good feeling if you see the little kids in their uniforms coming out there to start the baseball season. Sure sign of spring.
Some of those kids looked pretty big, though, to me.
Well, they go from little tiny ones to bigger than I am. That's it.
Anything else, sir? For me, with respect to the vacation rental bills, it's very clear that that is one of the top priorities in our legislative agenda, to fight any encroachment whatsoever on our local ordinance. Our legislators know that. We leverage that with our relationships with them all the time when we speak to them. Our lobbyist works on it, and we're going to do everything we can to fight to protect our local ordinance. That has not changed and will not change. So I just wanted to reinforce that. I was remiss and there were two announcements that I forgot to make earlier at the start of the meeting, and one is that on Wednesday, March the 6th, there is a public meeting. Our engineering department is hosting a Malacompra Basin project update with the residents up there in the Hammock at the Hammock Community Center, and that's Wednesday, March the 6th at the Hammock Community Center, and that's 5 to 7 p.m. And again, that's all around our Malacompra Basin water quality enhancement project. So I'm sure you're going to be there, Mr. Commissioner?
Yes, I'll be there.
Okay. And then the other one is we're also hosting a meeting on Bay Drive Park, and that project update, which is going to be on Monday, March the 11th at the Hammock Community Center. And I don't see a time on here, but I'm assuming it's 5 to 7 o'clock. I'm sorry. So same time, just different date. So those are both upcoming. And also, lastly, I just wanted to thank you, Mr. Cameron. I'm appreciative of some of the workflow changes that you've put into place and some of the process changes. I feel like I have more information than I've had before, and you're doing it in such a way that it's incumbent upon me to read it and deal with it as I can on my schedule and not be encumbered with a lot of extra meetings or we're all getting the same information, so it's across the board, and it's not. I just like the process better, and I wanted to thank. I mean, that's something that doesn't really impact everybody else, but other than us commissioners. But I just wanted to thank you for that from my standpoint. So, and with that, I think I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We are adjourned. Thank you.